All right, everyone who's jumped on so far, we'll get started in about 3 minutes once everybody is able to join the Zoom. And then we'll do a lot about and learn a lot about cyber insurance. Okay, I'm going to grab some water. I'll be right back. All right, for those of you who are on, we'll get started in about 2 minutes. All right, let's see if anybody else is going to jump on, and then we'll kick things off. So, welcome those of you who have joined early. Happy to have you here. We have a pretty good webinar today, and it's going to be really easy for me since Joe's going to do most of the heavy lifting. We got a few more people jumping on, so let's give it another 30 seconds and then we'll kick off because I think we have about 50 minutes of material. We want to make sure we leave time for any questions anyone has at the end, and we'll try to get to the ones we can during the webinar as well. All right, so I think we're good. Let's kick things off. My name's David Gugick. I'm the VP of Product Management over at MSP360. I love doing these. These are my favorite kinds of webinars, the ones that are not product focused. It's because I tend to learn a lot putting them together. And I get to work with great partners. In this case, I'm excited to have with me Joe Brunsman, and this is our second webinar together. Joe is a licensed cyber insurance and tech E&O broker. He's also the founder of the Bruns Group, and he's here to answer all of our burning cyber insurance questions, and maybe some questions we didn't even know we had. So Joe's going to cover a lot of topics for us, including things like what is cyber insurance and who's it for, and maybe just as importantly, who's it not for, why your customers need it, how what it typically covers, and things that it typically doesn't, why it's important for MSPs not only to know about, but your customers to have. So a lot of great stuff that I'm going to turn over to Joe in just a second, but a little bit of housekeeping. There's a Q&A panel in Zoom, depending on your platform, maybe at the bottom right now. So if you have any questions that you want answered, please type it into the Q&A. I'll be monitoring the Q&A while Joe does his thing. You can also open up chat. I wouldn't mind if you did that now. So open up the chat. Let us know where you're calling in from, whether or not you're an MSP. So it's always good to know. You can use the chat option if you change the option to all panelists and attendees. That way your fellow attendees can see. I'm in Wilmington, Delaware, which if you're in the US, you probably have a pretty good idea where that is. If you're not, I'll be happy to tell you. So get into chat, let us know where you're calling in from. And then I think I'm just going to turn it over to Joe. So welcome, Joe. Thank you for doing this webinar with us today. I will let you take over and tell everybody everything they need to know about cyber insurance.
Hey, thank you much. I always, every time I hear somebody from Delaware, I always think of Wayne's World, right? Where like they're doing the little dance in front of the screen and they're like, "Hi, we're in Delaware." Just it gets
Yeah,
me
in
every time.
fact, but on Saturday Night Live this week, the town I live in Delaware got mentioned in that pre-recorded bit they did that was based on the
Oh,
HBO miniseries right now about a private investigator, or actually should say a detective investigating a crime in this area, and they mentioned the town I live in right on the board, surprisingly. So,
interesting.
welcome everyone. Joe, I'll leave it to you to kick off.
All right, so I'm going to be talking about cyber insurance, everything you wanted to know but were too afraid to ask. And it's kind of worth noting at the beginning here that cyber insurance, and we'll jump a little further into it, but think of it broadly as something that you could have both on your own tech E&O policy, as well as something your clients should have, possibly as a standalone or potentially an endorsement, although becoming increasingly rare somewhere else. All right, so moving on through, we're just going to kind of hit some basic questions here. I know a lot of this should be very pertinent for you guys, hopefully all of it, because I think you guys are getting a lot of questions from your clients, because I see these as well from my own MSP clients, on, hey, what is cyber insurance? What do I need in cyber insurance? What does it cover? What does it not cover? All the way down to, hey, MSP, can you look at this cyber policy that my guy sent over and tell me if it's good or bad? So hopefully this will arm you all with those types of answers. So first off, what is cyber insurance? Well, to begin with, there's over 200 different cyber policies. So you have to be fairly careful here. And every single policy is going to be different. I've read somewhere around 150 of those policies. I'm sure by now it's probably even over 300 policies, but every single one of them is different. They're all quite complex and lengthy. So it's not unheard of for a cyber policy to, really be in like the 90-page range, kind of depending upon the carrier there. Hopefully, most of them are kind of closer to like 60 or so. But most notably here, you need to understand that cyber insurance, it's not a legal term. Actually, it's not even an insurance industry term. So all of this is to say that, cyber insurance really kind of is like the wild west of insurance. It's really just kind of this general idea that people have, and I will say wrongly have, that anytime something goes wrong with a computer system or somehow a computer system is involved, defining that quite loosely here, that there's going to be insurance for that. And that's just not necessarily the case. Kind of something else I think you all need to be very wary of is, unfortunately, my industry has done an absolutely atrocious job at arming insurance brokers with any type of knowledge. So you'll see at the very end here, I've written, well, let's see, 2 books on cyber insurance and cybersecurity law. I've got a master's in cybersecurity law, but the average insurance broker is probably around 60 to 65 years old. And, you know, most insurance brokerages, if they have that kind of young guy that comes in, he's probably going to last less than 24 months before he leaves. So it's got about a 92% turnover rate within 2 years. So a lot of it is, hey, you got a license, here's a phone, start calling, right? So the whole dialing for dollars thing. That licensing process itself literally has nothing to do with cyber insurance. So let's see, 6 years ago, when I got my insurance license, it was a bunch of questions on, homeowners policies and auto insurance and all the stuff I actually don't even do, because I focus on E&O and cyber. So be very, very careful there. I would just like to say, whatever I tell you here or whatever another insurance guy tells you regarding cyber insurance or tech E&O, don't take anybody's word for it, right? Please just look inside of that policy. It should give you the yay or nay there. So even after having written 2 books on this, invested tens of thousands of hours probably at this point, into this specific area, people still call me and they're like, hey, I want cyber insurance. And I'm like, that's great. What do you want cyber insurance for? because ultimately it really just depends on what the specific needs of that client are. So in some circumstances, which we'll kind of delve into later here, cyber insurance may not actually cover that risk. Maybe that's actually, say, something that could be had on a crime policy, or that's a D&O type risk, or maybe that's an E&O risk as opposed to a straight cyber risk. So you'll see here, this is just kind of a recent client comparison that I did, and I marked out all the identifying information that, as I said before, cyber insurance is really kind of the Wild West. And so you'll see here, this was just 4 different carriers. There's a lot of differences in the policies themselves. Now, you don't have to read through the white and blue column there. Those were just kind of important points for that particular client. But even, how much cyber insurance do I need? What size deductible or retention do I need? What do I need on a cyber insurance policy? Ultimately, it just depends on that exact client. So you could even have clients in the same industry that are the same size that could have 2 completely different cyber insurance needs. It just depends on how they're functioning internally and what that actually means to them. Now, with that, a quick cyber insurance warning. So you'll see some of these slides that I put up, and in the upper corner here, you'll see where it says YouTube video. So I have a YouTube channel you guys can check out later, but you really have to be careful about these quick cyber insurance quotes. The way that this is going, because there's really very little money in cyber insurance, hence very little expertise, especially compared to like the E&O side, that the name of the game is just, hey, throw out a quote as fast as you possibly can, get that thing bound, get paid, move on to the next guy who needs a policy. And you really have to be careful there about insurance brokers that are doing that, because what you're going to see on like kind of the quick page that's automatically generated by these insurers, there's a big difference between what's on that quick page and what's actually inside of the policy. And so you have to be careful with that, because there could be rules inside of that policy, things that have to be followed, specifically in, say, like the cybercrime social engineering area. There could be specific clauses and mandatory endorsements. And 99 times out of 100, you're just not going to know that until the policy is actually bound and you have the policy sitting in front of you. And that's really the wrong time to figure out, hey, we're missing this widget that we need. This could be $1 million loss and we just don't have covered now. It could be, hey, we didn't think that this phrase meant this thing. We thought it meant something else. So you really have to be careful there with those quick cyber quotes. So please just tell your clients, be very careful of that. Likewise, if you're looking at quotes for your own tech E&O policy, please just dig into that. Specifically look at the definition of professional services and technology services, right? That's like the 80-20. That's the real heart of the policy there. That's going to say like, hey, we're going to cover you for these things unless excluded elsewhere. And if you're doing something that's outside those bounds, then you're probably not going to have coverage for that if something arises. So please make sure you're taking that as well. Now, what might actually be covered under a policy, and I say might because, once again, it just depends on the policy. Well, people often ask me like, what's in a cyber policy? And the unfortunate answer is, as I've said before, it just kind of depends, right? It just depends on who that policy is from, what the actual definitions say, that exact policy. But the easy way to think about it is the bucket system, patent pending, I will say. So the first part is going to be third-party cyber-related claims. And you're going to see that there's an overlap there with E&O. So, we'll say for a tech E&O policy for an MSP, obviously that's got 2 parts to it. And it's for a very specific purpose we'll talk about here in a second. But the 2 parts to a tech E&O policy are like the cyber side, which is kind of what we're chatting about here. So obviously important for your business and your clients, as well as that third-party liability. So third-party liability, think of that as like client brings a lawsuit against you. Now, with cyber insurance, as I've previously noted, you have to be careful because they'd be covered in different areas. So, for an MSP, you can't really get a standalone cyber policy. You should be getting a tech E&O policy. What's actually covered under the cyber side, if we jump back into that, Think of it as data breaches, ransomware, loss of funds, so cybercrime, social engineering, generally called, and miscellaneous coverages are inside of there. So as you're looking at these cyber policies and you're like, dear God, this thing's 90 pages long and it's got exclusions and carvebacks and counter carvebacks and partial exclusions and all this insurance trivia nonsense, really just try and break it down into like these buckets. And we're going to talk about kind of some of the more interesting points here. So the first part is going to be a data breach. Now, with that data breach, think of that as PII, PHI, or PCI. So PII, think of that as obviously social security numbers, driver's license numbers. Very important there. A lot of people miss that. A video, very popular video I just put up on my YouTube channel. It could also include bank account information with some method of access. Every state and territory has a slightly different version of what PII is. So kind of a little nugget here I'd recommend is that when you're talking with your clients and you're trying to figure out, okay, what do you have on your system? Make sure you're looking at, okay, where are their clients residents of? Because that's the data breach law that actually applies. It doesn't matter where your client physically resides, it's where their clients are residents of, which means they in turn might have to adhere to, so let's say, all 50 state and territory breach notification laws, which has very specific requirements in some states with what actual cybersecurity measures have to be in place there. So that's kind of a little tangent, but an interesting selling point for all the people out there. PHI, healthcare information. There's also a number of states that include healthcare data in their definition of PII, but we like to break it apart. Obviously, HIPAA high tech. And then PCI is credit card, debit card information. Now, with that, what do you actually need? Like, what should you be looking for in there? Attorney, forensics, hacker damage, also dealing with restoration, notifications, credit monitoring, business interruption. That's probably the single largest cost in most instances. And then the potential for regulatory fines and penalties. So at the end of this presentation, you get a free download of my book. I'm not going to harass you with insurance nonsense emails, but look into those regulatory sides, right? And start thinking about, okay, what regulations might these clients actually be falling under? And then start taking a look in the book where it's very clearly delineated, hey, these are the things that those clients may have to do on the cybersecurity side. So of course, name of the game here is do everything you reasonably can to avoid using cyber insurance, but if you have to use it, make sure you have the right thing. Moving on here to the second bucket, ransomware, which is crushing everybody at the moment. What do you actually need for ransomware? So attorney, forensics, ransomware payment. Let's talk about the attorney real fast because I skipped over that in the last one. What's the attorney actually doing in these instances? Well, not only are they communicating with, let's say, local, state, and federal law enforcement as appropriate, they're also looking at all the relevant laws that your client may fall under. And if you dig into those state and territory laws, there's all of these very weird little niche areas where, like, let's say they have a client in Hawaii. Well, there's like 4 different offices there that may have to be notified. And let's say they've got a client in Massachusetts. Well, that's the Massachusetts AG, and that's just going to be a giant nightmare to deal with. Et cetera, et cetera. And they also act as kind of like the catch-all for all of this going down on payments, contracts with, say, the forensics guys to determine the scope and nature of the breach, dealing with the negotiator that gets into the ransomware payments, once again, hacker damage, business interruption, and then circumstantially notifications, credit monitoring, and regulatory fines and penalties. So how could a ransomware event actually result in breach notification letters? Well, disclaimer here, I'm not giving any official insurance or legal advice. Probably should have said that at the beginning, but there's a difference between access and acquisition, right? So most laws will say if there was both access to a system and acquisition, then breach notification is required. You have to send out the letter and the credit monitoring, kind of all that stuff. Well, some ransomware, right? Like let's say HIPAA, for example, if you dig into HIPAA high tech, the way they actually state it is if you get hit with ransomware, there's a presumption that you have to notify clients of that issue, right? With breach notification letters and credit monitoring, unless you can prove otherwise. because their law is access and or acquisition. So kind of something to keep in your tool belt inside of there. But in some circumstances, right, we could also see exfiltration of data following or before a ransomware event. So like a double extortion event, that may require breach notification. So just because somebody gets a ransomware event, it doesn't necessarily mean that their clients are not going to be notified of that event. And I see a question over here. Do these policies require notification to the public or government? For example, if a law firm gets ransomware, no PII, and pays the ransom, then there might be a federal law broken, and that law's firm's leadership may go to jail if it becomes public. Not necessarily. So there's no. Let me think how to answer this question. So generally, paying a ransom does not require notification to the public or the government. There's a number of entities within the government right now that are trying to change that. So they're trying to have a central repository where you'd have to notify people before that happens. There's also kind of a little nugget of wisdom for everybody on the call here. You should also understand that these ransomware payments, a lot of this is where allowable by law. So there's a specific sanctions list from OFAC that was big news, I think, a couple months ago, where paying the ransom may actually be against the law, which I think is what you're getting into there. So is it from a sanctioned land? So yeah, this gets into OFAC, OFAC, where, you know, there is some avenue where you can actually try and legitimize that payment. You have to get approval from OFAC first, but they actually put in their letter, the presumption is you are not going to get that. So you should operate with the idea you're not going to be allowed to pay that ransom. So unless your client is like, you know, Columbia Sportswear or Nike, obviously they're going to get that exception. But if it's really anybody that's not in that top tier business level, then paying the ransom might be illegal, actually. And no insurance company is going to be put on a sanctions list by the United States government for paying a single ransom. So hopefully that answers your question there. All right, let's talk about loss of funds real quick. This one's going to be pretty straightforward. You'll see in front of you, there's a million different ways that these are worded and defined actually inside of policies. So you really have to dig into that. It just depends on the fact pattern of the loss, on if the policy will respond to that or not. So you have to think about, okay, what are your clients actually worried about? Or you as an MSP, like how are you actually worried about losing money? So just because it says social engineering loss coverage on that policy, that doesn't necessarily mean that you would have coverage if, say, one of your employees or yourself is tricked into wiring your own business's money, right? You have to look at the definition of what that means. It could mean, and this is very common, that if a bad guy gets into your system and tricks a bank into wiring your money, that there's coverage for that. Why do cyber insurers put that in almost all of these policies? Because the bank's really actually going to be on the hook for 99% of that loss. And so they're not really covering that much. So you have to be careful about how you're actually going about this. And the client and yourself, you have to understand what could your exposure be in this specific area. So if you want to learn more about that, there's actually a whole video on this. You know, if you have clients that are wiring large amounts of money, one thing to keep in mind is that these types of coverages are getting limited more and more every day. So even up to, say, like a year ago, I could easily get $1 million in coverage for these specific loss of funds areas. Now, if I could get $500,000, I mean, that's a unicorn. Most likely it's going to be 100,000. And if I can get $250,000, that's a good deal for the insured at the end of the day. So if you have clients that are sending hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars in the course of weeks or months for their particular business, that's a great video for watch for them. That really gets into kind of some much higher level insurance talk on where to go and how to actually potentially structure for that type of loss, which I'll skip here, but if you're interested, you can dig into that video. Now let's get into those miscellaneous and often missing coverage features.
But before you get into that, Joe, could I just ask a question?
Sure.
If a customer is going to have E&O and cyber insurance, and have both those policies, is there overlap between them? Meaning that, you know, some event may trigger some coverage on the E&O side before it hits the cyber insurance policy? And if so, does it is it important to have those policies from the same insurance carrier, same insurance company, or is it okay if they were from different companies? Like, how does that all work out?
So in most circumstances, I'll say 99.9% of circumstances, it's totally fine to have them from different carriers. Yes, there can be overlap there. Excuse me. And it just depends on how the actual claim is worded by the plaintiff's attorney, which makes it somewhat tricky. So like one of the things I have to do is if somebody comes to me and they're like, hey, I want cyber insurance, I'm like, okay, this is going to sound weird, but there's a very rational reason for this. I need to see if you have a crime policy. I need to see if you have an E&O policy. I need to see your business owner's policy. And the reason for that, there's a whole issue with kind of how deductibles are playing out. And once again, it just depends on the fact pattern of the loss or how the plaintiff brings a claim against you. I will say the plaintiff's bar is becoming much more savvy about wording their complaints so that it can be triggered by both an E&O policy, if appropriate for that type of business, and a cyber policy, right? Because the plaintiff's attorney, their job, right, is to recover as much as possible from wherever that recovery may potentially come from. So the issue we run into here is you might have, let's say your business owner's policy has like a small little endorsement on it of like $10,000. And then your E&O policy has a cyber endorsement on there for 25 grand, probably doesn't cover much. And then you have a standalone cyber policy. The issue you have is you don't know how the plaintiff's going to word that particular claim. So depending upon what happened, you may have to notify multiple insurers that something has gone wrong. Now with that, if we take it kind of a step back and we go, okay, what if we bought a house and we bought 2 different homeowners policies for that house and then the house burns down? Are we going to get double the value of our house back in insurance? No, right? Because obviously that's not an incentive that the court wants to put out into the world, right? That is just an incentive for massive insurance fraud. So the courts have struggled with how to deal with this, but I would say that what generally people need to be prepared for is that if you have a loss covered on multiple policies, then you may end up spending multiple deductibles or retentions. And think of a deductible or retention is the monetary value of how much risk you were willing to take on. So the last thing you want is, hey, we have a cyber policy. It's got a $5,000 deductible on it. That's how much risk I'm taking on. And then it turns out you also had a cyber endorsement on your E&O policy. Now, those endorsements on E&O policies, those are generally much less often triggered. So the deductible is higher on those. So then all of a sudden, hey, you have a $50,000 deductible on your E&O policy, right? And there's a little ransomware sublimit there. So that got triggered too. So now instead of say a $5,000 risk, you have a $55,000 risk. And what you thought you were going to get covered for, let's say it was just a real basic ransomware event at a small business. Well, instead of paying $5,000 and the insurance company paying the remaining 75, now you're paying 55 and then they're paying the remainder there. So you can be taking on inadvertently way more risk than you anticipated. And so you don't always need, there's very, very niche circumstances where you would need the same insurer for both cyber and E&O.
You just need a good attorney.
Yeah, like you really just need.
So like if I'm in my house and I have a fire and it damages my home and the car in the garage, I'm probably reaching out to my insurance carrier. I'm just giving them the basic facts. And I'm going to let them figure out which policy covers what. And you're right, there may be a deductible on both sides, but those deductibles are generally no higher than about $1,000 each, and that's not a big deal. But for an MSP's customer, where the deductibles can be quite high, and the language used to submit the claim is going to be probably much more technical than the customer can put together, that's why they really need an attorney on retainer to handle that for them. Okay.
Yeah, because frankly, that this all gets something into something called a mutually repugnant other insurance clause,
Sounds awful.
which is like master's level insurance stuff. I won't delve too far into it here or any further into it here. But yeah, you need to work with an insurance guy who like actually knows what he's doing, or that business could very well be screwed.
All right, thanks,
Um,
Joe.
Hopping back here into the miscellaneous and often missing coverages, crypto jacking, bricking, system failure, blah, 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 blah. Are these important or not? It depends on how you're set up as an MSP. It depends on what you're using, how all this works. But I would say that if your client is asking you, hey, does this cyber insurance policy look legit? One of the things you need to look out for is, say, two of the things: dependent business interruption and dependent system failure. So let's say your MSP gets hit with ransomware. And because of that, your clients cannot operate their system. And now they're losing money. Well, they were dependent upon you as an MSP and they're losing money. That's dependent business interruption, right? That's a great way to try and minimize your odds of a tech E&O claim. Likewise, dependent system failure. So let's say an outlandish possibility that Microsoft would put out a patch that turns out is just hot garbage and brings down a bunch of systems. Well, let's say it's not because of a breach. It's somehow the wires got crossed somewhere. Your MSP goes down. You're trying to fix that problem. Meanwhile, your businesses, your clients are losing money. That's dependent system failure. So if you're taking notes here, I'd put a big star next to dependent business interruption and dependent system failure. Kind of some other possible coverages here. Once again, it just depends on your business, or the business of your clients as well. It's like bodily injury, property damage. It just depends, right? If your client's a manufacturer, like, hey, yeah, maybe that's something they would really seriously consider. For an MSP, having bodily injury following some type of cyber event, probably pretty low probability that you would use that there. All right, let's talk about the limits of cyber insurance. And this is something that is very near and dear to my heart, because my industry is full generally of very stupid people who have promised the moon to everybody buying a cyber insurance policy. And I think it's just been very contrary to really common sense, quite frankly. So if you're an MSP out there, and my own MSP clients will tell me this, and they'll ask me like, hey, what should I say for this event? But if you're an MSP out there and you're saying, hey, you need to, let's say, probably follow these regulations, or hey, maybe having backups is like a really good idea. And then your client goes, well, why would I pay, 10x for that compared to the cyber policy, which is promising me that I have coverage for all of this stuff if something goes wrong, right? Well, the cyber insurance guys, if you go back to the very beginning of this presentation, they're lasting less than 2 years. They don't have a technical background. They have no economic incentive to actually delve into this stuff. They're promising everything in the moon, and it's actually very bad for everybody involved. So the starting assumption here is that they actually have appropriate coverage for whatever that loss would even be. So that's kind of the assumption I'm starting with. That's a big assumption, once again, because it just depends on the client if they have actually what they need for what those losses could be. So we're just going to put that aside for a sec and just assume that everything is hunky-dory. Well, first, fines and penalties. So there's a huge part of my book just solely devoted to the regulatory side and what could potentially be covered there. And a lot of businesses are frankly just shocked when I tell them, like, oh, you have one Massachusetts client? Well, now you fall under 201 CMR 17. Here's a list of 17 controls that are mandatory, and that's administrative, technical, and physical safeguards that have to be put in place. I mean, they're just shocked by that. And they're like, well, what happens if I just don't follow this, right? Like, it says regulatory fines and penalties. Well, the caveat is where allowable by law. So this includes HIPAA High-Tech, Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act, New York Shield Act, 201 CMR 17, CCPA, GDPR, all of that. Let's see. JP had another question here. I will answer that in 1 second, JP. All right. So first of all, it's where insurable by law. Where is that? I have no idea. And frankly, I've spent years of my life trying to figure that out. I have no idea. I have talked to every brilliant attorney I could find. They have no idea. And so often, we just don't know where that's actually insurable. Your clients, as I said before, likely subject to multiple state laws. How large are those penalties? No idea, frankly, because multiple state attorney generals can come after them. And so they also don't want that type of publicity, because then people like me are going to get that email notification in their inbox. So you'll see here, this is actually just from an actual cyber insurance policy. So regulatory proceedings, penalties, right? To the extent insurable under the law. Now you'd think even something like GDPR, we would have a good handle on that because it's been around for a little while. It's a very high profile. All types of companies have fallen victim to GDPR regulators. Well, this right here, this will just show you. This is from DLA Piper, by the way. So this is a massive law firm that has all of the resources in the world you could think of to try and figure out this question. And you'll see insurability of GDPR fines. If it's light green, insurable, they think. Unclear is gray, which is a whole lot of countries. And then not insurable is the dark green countries. And so all of these companies are like, my God, GDPR is a nightmare. We have to get GDPR coverage for this. Little do they know, because their insurance guys aren't telling them this, that it kind of just depends on where that GDPR claim originates from, on if we even think that's going to be insurable. So like we know what Norway and Slovakia. I hope they get a claim from Norway or Slovakia, that those are the originating countries, because if it's anywhere else, it looks like it's not insurable. So when you're talking to your clients, you're like, yeah, you have coverage for regulatory fines and penalties. Hey, ask your insurance guy to list out where those are actually insurable by law. It just depends. There's no case law out there yet. So if they answer back with anything except we have no idea, they are not telling the truth. JP had a question here. Is there any discussion around a framework that will reduce the premium for those clients that raise their cyber maturity for digital data? No, in the vast majority of circumstances, unless they're a massive organization, will it make any sort of material difference? But, generally speaking, anytime you're going to adhere to a framework, that's going to be more expensive than any type of cyber insurance reduction you're going to get. That being said, if they're heavily regulated, pretty much every regulator out there, at least on the US side, is using NIST CSF to actually go in for those regulatory investigations. So if they do fall under some type of regulation, that's a great place to start, would be NIST CSF. So probably not the answer you wanted there, but that's the best we have at the moment. Until those cyber insurance policies really start getting up to where they need to be, they're about half the cost of what they should be at the current moment for cyber insurers to actually be profitable, or not even profitable, actually just to break even.
How
So
long
it's
does
gonna
it
be,
take, Joe, for the insurance industry when a new insurance instrument shows up?
oh,
How long does it take them before everybody knows how to do it? The prices are more stable, the coverage is more consistent.
so actuaries want to see 30 years of data,
That is too
statistically
long.
viable data, which we just have no idea. So it's unlike every other line of insurance, because like we know how many car wrecks happen roughly every year, right? Within a margin of error. Like we know how many banks are robbed. We have zero clue how many ransomware events actually go down every year. We have zero clue what that actually costs businesses in the United States. Because as we talked about before, there's no legal requirement to disclose that ransomware payment.
And it's very hard
So
to calculate the cost of digital data. I mean, I see it
it
all the
is.
time, and on court shows where people try to sue, the computer repair shop for the loss of their, digital images, their digital pictures, their family pictures, that irreplaceable information, that data that is so important and personal to them, and the value of it in the court system is zero because
Oh,
there is no
precisely.
value.
Actually, I
So
have an article if anybody wants to look it up. It's in the CPA Journal. It's written for CPA firms, but if CPA firms should be worried about data breach claims, right? So like if you lose someone's data, can they come and sue you for that, right? Because they're like, you lost my social security number, so I'm going to sue you for that thing. Long story short, kind of the TLDR there is probably not, unless they lost more than 200,000 records and or they are a $1 billion business. Because like you said, like there's just, how much is a social security number worth? Like we have no idea, actually. Moving back on here, ongoing compliance costs are not insurable. So you'll see there, what could those ongoing compliance costs actually be? Well, I'm glad you asked. This, which you're not supposed to be able to read, I just highlighted in yellow all the fun things that the Federal Trade Commission is now requiring this particular business to do. And you'll see, I'll just put them over here as we go down. It's a ton of things. Of course, once again, mapping to NIST CSF. And by the way, this is for the next 20 years. So, as I said before, businesses have no idea what regulations they could fall under, because even the idea of privacy law, like Arizona right now, privacy law is not a practice area for Arizona attorneys. Like it just doesn't exist. Much less would businesses be then going to attorneys to say, hey, what regulatory regimes may we fall under that we need to adhere to X, Y, and Z? So that's really where I think it's a great place for MSPs to actually kind of sit down and start thinking about this with clients. Of course, don't give them legal advice, but say like, oh, well, if you're swiping credit cards, maybe PCI DSS, right? Or if you're a CPA firm, Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act, right? Let's look at what some of your requirements may be, because they don't want to fall into this. And I will say that the FTC is becoming more and more active every year. And they even went after a car dealership, saying that they fell under the auspices of the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act as a financial institution. A car dealership being construed as a financial institution just because they were dealing with financial material. So not something I think that your clients would want to do. And of course, this is going to be astronomically expensive to adhere to any sort of compliance moving forward, because let's say you're their MSP now of this business. I would say you're probably going to have somebody else on that engagement because you're worried that government regulators are going to be looking over your shoulder. And of course, now that's more risk to you as the MSP. So you're going to say, well, we're going to charge you like double, triple what going market rate is, because the risk here is so high to us that like we got to make this worth the squeeze. Kind of some other things here.
But what opportunity too, Joe? I mean, I do hear
Yes.
from a lot of the MSPs we work with two things. One, they love to use like free assessments as a way to engage, prospects and bring them on as customers. Doing like a security assessment or a HIPAA compliant, compliance assessment for those that are dealing with medical data, whatever it is, that is a great way to provide value to a potential client, to point out, what they're not doing great, what they're doing okay, and how the MSP might be able to help. But I do know a lot of other MSPs, especially during the pandemic, where security issues have been on the radar for not only people in IT, but the news media itself has been covering a lot of these security breaches. And so it's big news for even those of us outside IT. There's a lot of opportunity for MSPs to start thinking like managed security service providers. So thinking like MSSPs instead of MSPs, providing the additional security services and protections, whether that's, zero trust security models or implementing better security software for antivirus and anti-malware, whether it's training around, avoiding common phishing techniques, to keep people off the network and out of the corporate data. All of those things can be quite valuable, not only to your customers, but great revenue generators for the MSPs.
Yeah. And frankly, because I have so many MSP clients now and I do cyber insurance. So I end up doing a lot of cyber insurance for my MSP clients. And I end up actually being a great free sales guy a lot of the times, because I start going through all these questions to try and uncover what their risks are. And, a lot of times they don't want to pay for, let's say, security awareness training because they're like, we'll talk about it at the staff meeting like once a month. Right. And then it's, well, actually, you probably fall under this regulation and it says this, which means that, formalized security awareness training, it's actually probably a legal requirement. that you be doing that, right? And that obviously changes the dynamic there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree with you. Like, it's something I think that MSPs should be speaking to their clients about. Some other post-breach costs that are uninsurable. I mean, you'll just see all types of stuff here, and it really just depends on the exact policy there. But there's a lot of things that just simply are not covered because they are against public policy or against the law to be covered. So fines, sanctions, other types of penalties, punitive, exemplary damages, et cetera, et cetera. Going through here, long-term damage to brand identity. So this is something I think every MSP should talk to their client about. You'll just see from ZDNet, 1 in 4 Americans won't do business with data breach companies. What do I think this actually means? If somebody just goes to like Google your name, your business name, and the first thing that pops up is your webpage, and then right below that is data breach notification or local news. Hey, these guys got hit with a data breach, ransomware, a bunch of people's information got stolen. I see that all the time following something in the news, right? I'll go and look for that company and you'll just see it pop up. I've seen it actually just with my own clients, unfortunately, where they got hit with something. And then that's the second thing that pops up on Google. So your clients obviously don't want to be there. Neither does your MSP, actually. Also, clients are always worried, hey, are our clients going to leave following a breach? So I went through the Ponymon Institute studies from 2014 to 2019. 2020, will be on here shortly, but you can actually just look at the actual vertical there that your clients could be operating in. So health and financial, obviously those are going to be the top where people leave following a breach. And often we'll see the bigger the organization, the higher the percentage of clients leave because they don't have that personal touch. But for smaller businesses, still a concern, because let's say you have like one mulligan every year, right? Where the payment portal didn't work or you misplaced a piece of paperwork. Like, everybody gets that, right? We're all human. It's just part of doing business. When you start adding up, say, the mulligan during the year, which is generally forgettable, but still annoying to somebody, plus a loss of their information, that's when people are going to leave those small businesses. So, that's just something here where, with the economy being the way it is and as expensive as it is to get new customers, you don't want to just unnecessarily hamstring your own business that way. Some other things here, you're going to miss out on contracts. So you'll see this is from the FTC. So the FTC is kind of like the nation's cyber cop, as it were, that ultimately you are responsible for the security of your vendors. That's where SOC reports came out. So SOC 1, SOC 2, SOC 3, Type 1 and Type 2 inside of there. So you'll see that they're responsible for the security of their vendors. The FTC and state attorney generals take that very seriously. So if they just don't have cybersecurity controls in place, they're either already getting it or they shortly will get some requirement to have specific or reasonable cybersecurity controls in place, or some type of attestation from a third party that they have those controls in place. And this is just becoming more and more common. I see this in contractual requirements like damn near every day at this point. So just another thing you can talk to your clients about. Moving on here, the other thing they don't want to do, test their policy limits. So, if they're just relying on cyber insurance because they don't want to spend money on cybersecurity, I mean, that's great. Let's say it's covered. They get hit once during a year. We have zero idea on the probability of multiple breaches in a year. Like, we do not know. I've seen no statistically viable data there. So, we have seen it before where a business blew through their entire cyber insurance policy in the first month. So then the next 11 months, they're just sitting there crossing their fingers, hoping to God that nothing else happens. So that is a place your business or your clients don't want to be. Likewise, testing the limits of the application. We briefly talked about this before, but it ultimately just depends. But it's not something that the average business wants to do. The higher the limits on that policy, the more likely it's going to be that cyber insurer is going to be taking a heavy look at that. And of course, successive breaches lead to uninsurability. We're already seeing this. Even 2 years ago, I could have a client get breached. They could get a new cyber policy from a different cyber insurer that was actually cheaper than before they got breached, which is kind of insane because every other line of insurance, it doesn't work that way. It's you get in a car accident, your car insurance is going up. Your house burns down, your homeowner's insurance is going up. Your business gets sued, your business owner's policy is going up in price. All of that has actually changed. And it goes down into something called a loss ratio. So think about it like this way. Cyber insurance companies are already just losing money hand over fist. Even the established insurers, no matter what you're seeing in the news about such and such cyber startup got some series funding of, X tens of millions of dollars. It's because they're burning through cash at just a phenomenal rate. They're all trying to play like the Uber long game here. And as far as I can tell, Uber's never actually made money, but different conversation. What is a loss ratio? What you paid in versus what the insurance company paid out. So cyber policy, let's say it's $2,500, whatever that case may be. They pay out, say, 75 grand for a ransomware event. How many years would it take them to recoup that loss? Obviously, cyber insurance companies now, not only are they ratcheting up what that price is going to be, they're finally getting smart enough to actually require very specific controls be implemented before they will actually issue terms or bind a policy for your clients or yourself, actually. So something to keep in mind as we move forward. And at the end of the day, just remember this, right? Like cyber insurance is like health insurance. Just because you have health insurance doesn't mean you can just eat yourself into a diabetic coma, right? You still need to work out, watch what you eat, look both ways before you cross the road. Companies are putting way too much trust in cyber insurance because my side of the equation is doing a terrible job of explaining to them what those specific limitations could be. So with that, that's why I like to push that out to the MSP community so that we can get the message further out there that yes, cyber insurance is required, really just being a modern business, but it's like health insurance. Don't just overly rely on that. You still need to floss at the end of the day. All right, who needs cyber insurance? And I know, Dave, we got 10 minutes left here. So I think we're on pretty good track. So who actually needs cyber insurance? Well, just about everyone is kind of the spoiler alert here. Now, one of the things I want to say is I have an entire video here on why every client of an MSP must have or want cyber insurance. And increasingly, we're recommending to MSPs, hey, consider contractually requiring cyber insurance of your clients, right? Contractually requiring that. It sounds scary, but they're probably getting that contractual requirement from somebody else, or they're going to be getting it shortly. But you need to be looking out for yourself as well as an MSP. Kind of the foundation of this is, what do the breach laws actually say? And most people have just never actually read the breach laws. I've read all of them cover to cover. And generally, I'll say the following. You have two kind of big distinctions here: data holders and data owners. What's the difference there? Data holders, that would be like your MSP, software providers, AWS or Azure. Those are just data holders. Those are not data owners. The data owners are actually your clients. And this is something that I think is a very large misconception in the world, where if we even look at, let's say, Texas's law, for example. So we'll go here and it says third-party data notification. So it says any entity that maintains computerized data that includes sensitive personal information as it's defined by Texas that does not own that data shall notify the owner or the license holder of a breach of the security system. So like, what's your kind of true legal liability as far as these laws are concerned? It's not that you're going to pay for a breach. It's not that you're going to pay for breach notification and credit monitoring and all that stuff. It's that your clients have to pay for that stuff. And, a lot of businesses would just go, well, what am I paying your MSP for? Like, how is that fair at all? That it's not even my system. Maybe if it's not even my mistake, but yet I would still have to pay for it. Well, there's actually very good reasons for that. So one, if you actually go back to the legislative history in California, which was the first one to pass that breach notification law, they wanted to spread that risk around to as many parties as possible. Now, that obviously it encourages the free market, which is good for everybody. And you'd have to think, like, let's say Microsoft was responsible for the breach costs of any time something happened with a Microsoft product and somebody lost money. Like, can you imagine how expensive it would cost for a license of Windows 10. I mean, it would just be astronomically high. Likewise, your MSP would likely probably not even be a business industry, because if every MSP was responsible for every bad thing that happened at your clients or what they did on their systems, I mean, it would just make being an MSP so ridiculously unaffordable as to be insane. So you also have to consider that like your insurance, it's limited in scope, right? Thinking of this from your client side. So not everything you're going to do is actually going to be an E&O claim, aka tech E&O professional liability claim. What does it generally cover? Damages due to professional services rendered. So you did something and it harmed your client. You forgot to do something. You did something incorrectly. It harmed your client. That's generally what the E&O claim side is going to be for. Now, it's not going to be if it's just not really designed to be the piggy bank for your clients to start trying siphoning money from every time their bookkeeper wires $100,000 out the door. Like, it's just not what that's designed for. That's actually what we're seeing right now, which is why the rates for tech E&O are increasing every single month, is because we're just seeing too many tech E&O claims. I do have another video on my YouTube channel. Once again, that stuff's all free, but it's hard truths that every MSP needs to hear. And there's a lot of risk management recommendations in there that I think every MSP needs to jump through. Kind of the other side, hey, your insurance is limited in size. So why would your clients want to get cyber insurance? Well, if you legitimately screwed something up and they have a claim against you, like, that's great. But if all of your clients get hit with ransomware, right? So you're talking business interruption costs, forensics, et cetera, it's just he who files first gets all the money, and then everybody else is going to be out of it. Likewise, you don't want, so your clients, right? They don't want to have a legitimate claim that they bring against you only to see that pot of cash that your insurance got greatly diminished because Bob's business down the street wasn't paying attention. Let's say wired $250,000 out the door and brought a claim against you, right? So there's a bunch of very rational reasons for this. And then there's some situations where there's just no real reasonable claim against you. So let's say they're tricked into wiring $1 million. Could they bring a claim against your MSP? Like, they could, but your client would then have to think, okay, this is something that could have been covered very clearly under cyber insurance, but now it's going to be a prolonged legal battle, especially at $1 million. How much is that going to cost for their own attorney? Would they even win in the end? Most likely it's going to be a settlement, which means there's going to be some proportion of that $1 million that's going to get paid out just to make them go away. What that is, it really depends. But if your client had cyber insurance, it's easier for them to recoup that loss. Likewise, it's better for your MSP because you should not be wanting to deal with that type of incident. And kind of moving forward here, I want to get to a claim.
Joe, I'm sorry. Where you have about, let's take 2 more minutes. I know we have a lot of slides. I know we had more information than we probably could fit into an hour. Why don't you pick the data points for 2 minutes, and then we'll just do our wrap-up slides. And then we can come back to anything if you want. That way we kind of wrap up within the hour for anybody who has to leave, and then we can kind of backtrack if we need to.
Sure. So it's actually this one right here, the Borough of Duncan and Verse. I pulled out the name of the MSP, but this is the claim here. It's kind of got some interesting teaching points. So the borough actually suffered a ransomware event. So no surprise there that a municipality got hit with ransomware. They were forced to pay over $40,000 to the bad guys, and then they try to recoup that from their MSP. And you'll see here, these are just quotes from local news articles. They were under the impression the company had already provided them with adequate backups and security. So that's an issue there. That's a communications issue. But ultimately, it's also an issue with why didn't that borough have cyber insurance? More specifically, why did that MSP not contractually require the borough to have cyber insurance? So this particular claim went on for well over a year before it was finally resolved. Now, obviously, that's not a fun time if you're an MSP owner. And now their name is in the news, this particular MSP. And who knows if, just like we talked about for your own clients, you search for that MSP because you're like, hey, I need an MSP. This pops up, right? And now you're going down this whole rabbit hole and you're like, can I really trust these guys? I don't know a lot about technology. Like, that's what they're supposed to be for. Like you just don't want to be put in that position, right? So one is the MSP contractually require that cyber insurance, right? Make that a real consideration. Also, take a round turn there, as we say in the Navy, on how you're communicating with your own clients in terms of what they have, what they don't have, et cetera, et cetera. With that, I'll just kind of keep on going through here, and I will end some other resources for you. What I wish you knew about cyber insurance applications. Should you resell cyber insurance? Short answer is no. Some ransomware secrets that no one talks about. This is the $1 million HIPAA laptop. If you have any HIPAA clients, that's a great video to watch. It should help you out there. SolarWinds, obviously that was a huge topic. And with that, this is where you can download my book for free, Damage Control Cyber Insurance Compliance. 500 wonderful pages of everything you wanted to know about that. And then that's my YouTube and LinkedIn if you want to reach on out. And with that, Dave, I will turn it back on over to you.
All right. So just very quickly, I know most of you are probably familiar with what we do at MSP360, but on the off chance that you're not, we created backup services for MSPs about a decade ago with the intention and the goal of having it be competitively priced, because we know you're in the reseller business and you have to resell these services to your customers, making it powerful, meaning that we want to be able to back up everything that you need to back up at your customers, their Windows endpoints and servers, file folder, as well as full image-based backup, Macs, Linux, VMware, Hyper-V, Microsoft SQL Server and Exchange if they're running those on-prem databases if needed, as well as Google Workspace, which I think used to be called G Suite, Microsoft 365, which is the new name for Office 365. Everything's centrally administered. It's a SaaS application, so no server components to install either at the MSP or at your customers. All the data travels from your customers' endpoints and servers to the cloud storage of your choice. We do not provide private cloud storage, although we do integrate with and provide and resell Wasabi storage. So if you're looking for a one bill solution because you don't want to open up your own cloud storage accounts, we will sell you Wasabi storage at exactly the same price that Wasabi would sell it to you. So no markup from us, just the convenience of a single bill if you want. Our licensing starts at only $5 a month. So if you have any other questions, you can go to the next slide, Joe. Head on over. One more. Just click it again. Oh, sorry. No. Sorry, I was looking at the wrong one. You got it. So if you're using a competitive product, maybe you're not happy with them or you've outgrown them and want to switch, we do have a 90-day free license switch program. You can talk to your account manager about that. If you want to see a demo or sign up for the free trial, we don't need a credit card or anything like that. Just to head to MSP360.com. We have a remote desktop product as well if you want to check that out, fully integrated in with our managed backup solution, although they can be used separately. And then if you're an MSP, which I know most of you are, we do have a lot of great MSP-focused information on our website and our MSP University about running an MSP business, how to do selling and marketing and run a help desk, all great stuff that you can check out for free, as well as all of our previous webinars, including the one that Joe and I did a few months ago.
If I could add one quick note here.
Yeah.
So a major cyber insurer that everybody here would know the name of is now actually only offering a $25,000 ransomware sublimit, which is like nothing, right? I mean, that's like a small fraction of what even a tiny business would need, unless they have cloud backups. That's what they want. That's what they're saying is the jam. So
yeah, so cloud backups are great for that disaster recovery offsite backup, right? Because it's usually it's semi-air gapped, not fully air gapped, but it provides another level of protection, especially against security incidents like malware, ransomware, that could easily access everything within the network, especially if you and your customers have not embraced sort of a zero trust, least privilege access type setup, which most customers don't, especially smaller businesses, because it's difficult and time consuming to implement. But everything, generally speaking, on the network could be at risk with a ransomware attack, and having data in the cloud can go a long way to avoid having to pay for a large ransom and getting your data back quickly so you can restore their systems and reduce their downtime.
And yeah, they've also said that, they have true data that cloud backups are faster in terms of restoration.
That can be
So
true
they're
as
faster,
well.
they're more secure, and that's why they're like, hey, if you don't have this, you effectively get zero ransomware coverage. So coming down the pike.
All right, good. I think that's it. There was one more question about slides. Yeah, we'll send out an email to everybody who registered for the event, so you can rewatch the, you can stream the event, and you'll be able to see all the slides in case there was something you wanted to refer to, or just watch it again if you want to hear Joe go through everything that he talked about one more time. All right, so I want to thank everybody for coming. I want to thank Joe for doing this with us. Joe did most of the heavy lifting here, and this is his area of expertise, so we're happy to have you, Joe. We're glad you agreed to do this for us and our customers. We hope you found it useful. Reach out to us if you have any ideas about what you'd like to see next. If there are any specific topics you want to see us do, or if you're interested in seeing more about cyber insurance, I'm sure we could convince Joe to come back with some new topics. So thanks everybody for coming today.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Joe. Oh, one more question. Let's see what it is. Great job, guys. Thanks. Okay. Thank you. We appreciate it. All right, that's it, Joe. I'll go ahead and end it. You know where to reach me if you have any questions.
Sure.
Okay.
Good seeing you again, David. Appreciate it.
All
man.
right. Thanks, Joe.
All right. Bye.